Sarah is 35 years old. She's sitting in her car in a parking lot outside a Target. Engine off, phone in hand. She just read a headline that said the average 35-year-old in America has a net worth of $436,000. She stares at it for a long time. Then she opens her banking app, checks her savings, closes it immediately. She's not close to $436,000, not even in the same conversation. And in that parking lot on a Tuesday afternoon, she does what millions of people her age do when they read that number. She wonders if she failed. Here's the thing, Sarah. You didn't fail. But that number absolutely did. Because the $436,000 figure you keep seeing in headlines and financial planning articles on CNBC is one of the most misleading statistics in personal finance. And understanding exactly why it's misleading is going to completely change how you see your financial situation. My name is Movo, and I spend way too much time thinking about the numbers that define how people see themselves financially, and whether those numbers are actually telling the truth. If you've ever read a financial benchmark and felt like you were failing, subscribe, because today we're going to find out what's actually true. Let's get into it. Let's start with the stat itself. According to the Federal Reserve's most recent survey of consumer finances, the average net worth of Americans aged 35 to 44 is approximately $436,000. That number gets picked up by every major financial publication. CNBC runs it, Forbes references it, financial advisors quote it to clients. And for most 35-year-olds reading it, it lands like a punch in the stomach. But here's the single most important thing I'm going to tell you today. That $436,000 is an average, not a median. And in wealth statistics, that difference is everything. Here's why. When you calculate an average, you add up every single person's net worth and divide by the number of people. Sounds fair, right? The problem is wealth is not evenly distributed, not even close. If you put Mark Zuckerberg and 9 completely broke people in a room, the average net worth of that room is over $17 billion. Technically accurate, practically meaningless. The median is different. The median is what you get when you line everyone up from poorest to richest and find the person standing exactly in the middle. That's your real neighbor. That's the real 35-year-old. And the median net worth for Americans aged 35 to 44? $91,300. Not $436,000, not even close. That gap, $344,700, exists entirely because a tiny percentage of ultra-wealthy individuals at the top drag the average up to a number that represents almost nobody's reality. When CNBC tells you the average 35-year-old has $436,000 in net worth, what they're actually doing is averaging Mark Zuckerberg's billions with your coworker who drives a 2015 Honda and has $4,000 in savings, and calling both of them the same person. They're not the same person. Sarah in the parking lot isn't failing. She's just being compared to the wrong number. Okay, so if $436,000 is the wrong number, what's the right scoreboard? I want you to actually do this right now. Pause if you need to. Open your banking app, your investment accounts, your retirement account, any property equity you have. Add up everything you own. Then subtract everything you owe. Credit cards, car loans, student loans, mortgage balance, all of it. That number, assets minus liabilities, is your net worth. Write it down. Now here's the real benchmark for a 35-year-old in 2026. If your net worth is under $14,000, you're in the bottom 25% of your age group. And I want to be very clear, that doesn't mean you failed. It means the system has been working against you, and we're going to talk about why. If you're sitting around $91,300, you are exactly the median. Mathematically, you are the most average 35-year-old in America. If you got around $290,000, you're in the top 25%. That's genuinely doing well. If you're at $685,000, top 10%. Your friends probably think you're doing fine but don't know the actual number. And if you're at $3.5 million or above, top 1% at age 35. And you're probably not watching this video, so thanks for being here anyway. Now here's the part that matters more than any of these numbers. Most people who see the $91,300 median feel okay about it. That's real money, that's progress. But that $91,300 is hiding something very important. And once you see what's actually inside it, the whole picture changes dramatically. Here's what almost nobody tells you when they throw these benchmark numbers around. For the typical 35-year-old, the vast majority of that net worth isn't money, not in any way you can actually use. Let's break down what the median $91 and $300 actually looks like. For homeowners in this age group, and only about 52% of 35-year-olds own a home, roughly 60 to 70% of their net worth is locked inside their house as equity. Take the median $91,300, strip out the home equity, roughly $55,000 for the average homeowner in this group. You're left with about $36,000 for everything else. Retirement savings, investment accounts, emergency fund, college savings if you have kids, everything. $36,000. That's the entire liquid financial cushion between the median 35-year-old and a genuine financial emergency. And here's the part that really matters. Home equity is not money, not the way people pretend it is. You cannot pay your electric bill with home equity. You cannot buy groceries with home equity. If Sarah wants to turn that equity into actual cash, she has exactly 3 options. Sell the house, and then go pay current market prices for a different one, which in most cities means spending more than she got. Refinance, pay closing costs and extend her mortgage further into the future. Take out a home equity loan, which is essentially a bank charging her interest to borrow her own money back. Impressive business model. And for the 48% of 35-year-olds who don't own a home, their median net worth drops to approximately $11,000. $11,000? That's the entire financial picture for nearly half of all 35-year-olds in America who rent. Now I know that number might have just made your chest tight, and if it did, that's the correct reaction, but not for the reason you think. Because what I want to show you next is why this happened, and it's not the reason most people assume. Here is a fact that you will not see in a single financial news headline. If you are 35 years old today, you entered the workforce during or just after the worst financial crisis since the Great Depression. The 2008 crash didn't just lose people money, it froze wages, destroyed entry-level jobs, and made starting a career in 2008, 2009, 2010, or 2011 one of the worst economic timing events of the last 100 years. The research on this is damning. People who graduate into a recession earn less, on average, for the next 10 to 15 years compared to people who graduated into a strong economy, not just at the start, for over a decade. So today's 35-year-olds spent their peak early career earning years, the years when compound interest works hardest for you, earning suppressed wages. But it gets worse. By the time wages started recovering, around 2015, 2016, housing prices had already begun their historic run upward. The window to buy a starter home at an affordable price was closing fast. And then 2020 happened. The pandemic pushed home prices to levels that would have seemed cartoonish 5 years earlier. The average home price in the U.S. went from roughly $320,000 in early 2020 to over $420,000 by 2022. In major cities, far higher. Interest rates then rose to their highest levels in decades, pushing monthly mortgage payments to record highs even as home prices stayed elevated. Today's 35-year-old either bought a home during the run-up and is now sitting on equity but locked into a high mortgage payment, or they're still renting, watching home prices stay out of reach while building almost no equity. Either way, they got the worst version of the deal. And then there's student loans. The generation of people who are 35 today was the first to fully experience the explosion in college tuition costs. They were told, loudly and repeatedly, that a college degree was essential. They borrowed to pay for it. And then they entered a job market that didn't compensate them for it the way they were promised. The average student loan balance for borrowers in their mid-30s is around $42,000. At current interest rates, that's a significant monthly drain that directly competes with every dollar that could be going into savings or investments. This is not a story about bad decisions. This is a story about catastrophically bad timing dressed up as personal failure. Today's 35-year-old is not behind because they spent too much on coffee. They're behind because the economic ground shifted underneath them 3 separate times before they turned 30. Now let's zoom out, because this isn't just an American story. In the UK, the picture for 35-year-olds is remarkably similar, and in some ways more severe. The average net worth for someone aged 35 to 44 in the UK is approximately $170,000. But again, that's the average. The median tells a very different story, sitting closer to $50,000 to $60,000 for most people in this bracket. And just like in America, a huge chunk of that is locked in housing equity, for those who manage to buy. In London, the average first-time buyer is now 34 years old. A decade ago, it was 29. The UK generation of 35-year-olds also graduated into the aftermath of the 2008 crisis. They faced a decade of wage stagnation. They watched London and other major cities become increasingly unaffordable, and they're now navigating the highest cost of living in a generation. In Australia, the story is even more dramatic. Sydney and Melbourne have some of the least affordable housing markets in the world relative to local wages. Young Australians are buying their first homes later, borrowing more, and starting wealth building a full decade behind their parents. In Canada, Toronto, Vancouver, same pattern. Record housing costs, record debt loads, a generation squeezed from every direction. The 35-year-old in Manchester, the 35-year-old in Melbourne, the 35-year-old in Toronto. They're all looking at the same benchmark numbers and feeling the same thing Sarah felt in that parking lot. Like they failed at something the system made nearly impossible to succeed at. They didn't fail. The benchmarks are wrong, the timing was brutal, and the path forward exists, but it looks different than it did for previous generations. Here's something that might genuinely surprise you. Your net worth number right now, at 35, matters far less than most financial content suggests. What actually determines your financial future at this age isn't where you are. It's the direction and speed you're moving. Let me show you what I mean with real numbers. Two people, both 35, both with a net worth of $40,000. Person A has $40,000, but is spending every dollar they earn. No savings rate, no investments being added. The $40,000 is just sitting there. Person B has $40,000, but is saving and investing $800 a month consistently. At age 55, 20 years from now, Person A still has roughly $40,000 in net worth, maybe a little more. Person B, at a 7% annual return, a reasonable long-term average for a diversified index fund portfolio, that $800 a month over 20 years grows to approximately $520,000. Add the original $40,000 compounding separately, and they're looking at over $600,000. Point. Same age. $560,000 difference, created entirely by direction and consistency, not by starting amount. This is what Movo means when he talks about the compounding window. At 35, you have roughly 30 years before a traditional retirement age. That is an enormous amount of time for compound interest to work. The person who starts at 35 with $0 but saves $500 a month consistently will end up with significantly more than the person who had $100,000 at 35 but stopped contributing. Because in the long run, consistency beats starting balance. Every single time. Let's get very specific. Because general advice at this age is almost useless. Here is the exact sequence that matters for a 35-year-old trying to build real wealth from wherever they're starting. Step 1. Know your actual number. Not the number you think you have, the real one. Assets minus liabilities. Written down. Today. Most people have a vague sense of their finances. Vague doesn't build wealth. Clarity does. Step 2. Establish the emergency buffer first. Before retirement accounts, before investing, before anything else. 3 to 6 months of essential expenses sitting in a high-yield savings account, currently paying around 4 to 5% annually, completely untouched except for genuine emergencies. For the median 35-year-old with median expenses, that's roughly $15,000 to $25,000. Why this first? Because without it, every unexpected expense becomes a debt. And debt at 20% plus interest undoes investment returns at 7% to 8%. The emergency fund isn't boring. It's the foundation everything else is built on. Step 3. Eliminate high-interest debt aggressively. Any debt above 8% interest, most credit cards, many personal loans, needs to go before significant investing begins. Here's the math. If you're earning 7% in an index fund but paying 21% on a credit card, you're losing 14% on net. Every dollar that goes to the credit card is a guaranteed 21% return, better than any investment on earth. Pay minimums on everything. Throw every extra dollar at the highest interest rate debt first. Eliminate it. Move to the next one. This is the debt avalanche method. It's mathematically optimal and it works. Step 4. Capture every free dollar first. Once high-interest debt is handled, or while you're handling it if your employer offers a match, maximize your 401k employer match. An employer match is an immediate 50% to 100% return on your contribution. No investment on earth offers that. Not capturing it is leaving guaranteed money on the table. If your employer matches 4% of your salary, contribute at least 4%. Non-negotiable. Step 5. Max the Roth IRA. After the employer match, contribute to a Roth IRA up to the annual limit. Currently $7,000 if you're under 50. Why Roth? Because at 35, you have 30 years of tax-free growth ahead of you. The taxes you pay today on Roth contributions are significantly less painful than the taxes you'd pay on 30 years of compounded returns. The Roth IRA is one of the most powerful wealth-building tools available to anyone, and most people either don't use it or don't use it correctly. Step 6. Invest the rest in a taxable brokerage. After emergency fund, after high-interest debt, after employer match, after Roth IRA, anything left goes into a taxable brokerage account. Simple. Low-cost index funds, total market, automatic contributions. Set it and walk away. You don't need to pick stocks. You don't need to time the market. You don't need a complicated strategy. You need consistency and time. That's it. That's the whole game at 35. Step 7. Attack the income side. This is the step most financial advice skips. But at 35, increasing income is often more impactful than optimizing expenses. A $10,000 salary increase through negotiation, a job change, a promotion, or a side income, invested consistently at 7% over 30 years, is worth approximately $1 million in additional retirement wealth. One conversation, one job change, one skill developed and monetized. The math on income growth at this age is staggering, and most people never ask. Let's go back to Sarah in the parking lot. She puts her phone down, sits with the number for another minute. Then she does something different. Instead of comparing herself to the $436,000 average, she looks up the median, finds $91,300, calculates her own net worth on the back of a receipt she finds in the cup holder. She's at $47,000, mostly in her 401k, some in savings, no credit card debt, a car loan with 18 months left. She's below the median, but not by as much as she thought. And she's carrying way less debt than most people her age. She makes 3 decisions before she starts the engine. 1. She's going to call HR on Monday and increase her 401k contribution by 3%. That's about $180 more a month. 2. She's going to open a Roth IRA this week. Start with $200 a month. 3. She's going to pay an extra $300 a month toward the car loan. Kill it in 8 months instead of 18. That's $680 a month redirected. Not toward lifestyle, toward the future. At a 7% return over 30 years, those 3 decisions made in a parking lot on a Tuesday afternoon are worth approximately $680,000. She didn't need to start with more money. She just needed to start. The average 35-year-old does not have $436,000. The median 35-year-old has $91,300, and most of that is locked in a house. And the real 35-year-old, the one who's been working hard through a 2008 crash, a pandemic, record housing prices, and wage stagnation, is doing better than a misleading statistic told them they were. You are not behind because you failed. You are where you are because the timing was genuinely hard. For everyone. Everywhere. But here's what matters now. The compounding window is open. It stays open for 30 more years whether you use it or not. The direction you start moving today, even slowly, even imperfectly, is the thing that determines where you stand at 65. Where you started. Not what the headline said. Not the parking lot moment. What you did next. If this video helped you see your situation more clearly, hit the like button. It genuinely helps this reach people who need to hear it. Subscribe to Movo Animation if you haven't, because every week we cover exactly these kinds of numbers. The ones hiding behind misleading headlines. The ones that actually matter. Not financial advice, just the patterns that keep showing up in people who end up with options versus people who end up without them. See you in the next one.